Good morning, everybody. Oh, thank you, Stephanie. Good job. Good morning to those of you who are here in this room with us. Good morning to those of you who are online joining us on YouTube. It is good to be together on a very cold and windy and weird weather day outside, right? After yesterday's beauty. So it's good to see you all here. So thank you for joining us this morning. Just a couple of announcements. Tonight is branch students. You all will meet here at 6 o'clock. This is middle school and high school students. They come for a time of connection and fun and learning together. And if you haven't been or you haven't been in a while, you are always welcome and you are always invited to pick it up again or pick it up for the first time. We'd love to have you here. There's also a meal train link that went out for CJ Prost, who had surgery on his knee. Many of you have signed up for that and taken food over there. Thank you so much for that. If you can either send a gift card or if you can make something or deliver something this week, they would much appreciate that. Lindsay, have you heard anything else from them? Anything to add? Yay. Beautiful. Thank you. For those of you online who didn't hear Lindsay, Elizabeth was gone for a funeral for the first few days of recovery, and she is home now. So, and so far, recovery is going well. So we're glad for all of that. But if you can help, that would be amazing. The link is up there on your screen. Also, you walked in this morning and there were not circles. We are back in rows today. So for the last 3 weeks, we have been in small group conversations talking about our future and who we are as a community and who we want to be and how we can show up in the world. If you were not part of those discussions and would like to participate in some of those discussions, we're offering one more chance this evening at 6 o'clock here in the basement, right? Where the kids usually meet in the grade school room. So if you were missing for 1 week and you want to come, great. If you missed all of it, we would love to have your voice there as well. So would you, if you are planning to come, would you let either Chris or I know sometime this afternoon so we know to expect you? That'd be great. All right, one more quick thing about masks and COVID and all the things that are all on our mind all the time. The Steward team is meeting this coming week. We've been talking to families. We've been talking to especially families of littles who haven't had the opportunity to get vaccinated yet and just getting some feedback. So we're going to collect all of that and have a conversation this week at the Steward team, and we'll let you know what comes of that, okay? So stay tuned to your email. We will keep you posted on all of that. All right, Joanna is going to come up here and help me. We are going to light a Christ candle each Sunday in Lent. It's something that we do in Advent and Christmas time, but we thought we would do it for Lent as well. And so, Brian, would you put those words up there? As Joanna lights this candle as just a way to enter into this space and to ground ourselves and to remind us of God's presence here with us always, but especially in this moment. Will you say these words with me as Joanna lights this candle? God is here. We are here. This is holy ground. Amen. Joanna's going to lead us in a call to worship.
As darkness gives way to light and winter sleep to fresh beginnings, today to be reminded of God's love for us. Like the green shoots of renewed life stirring beneath the soil, we welcome an awakening of God's word in our lives. In this time of reflection and repentance, we affirm our identity and create security as children of God.
Well, as I was thinking this morning about gathering together in worship, this was a portion of Scripture that came to mind. This is in Acts 17. The Apostle Paul is speaking to a group of people in the city of Athens, and these people are in kind of a church, I suppose, that has a bunch of little idols to all the different gods that might they possibly be worshiping. And there's even an idol there with the inscription on it, "To the unknown God," just in case they missed somebody that might be out there. So these were people that were wanting to worship but not really knowing who to worship. And this is what Paul says. He says, "I found this idol with the inscription, 'To the God nobody knows.' And I'm here to introduce to you this God so that you can worship intelligently. Know who you're dealing with." And this is from the Message translation. Paul says, "The God who made the world and everything in it, the master of sky and land. He doesn't live in custom-made shrines, or he doesn't need the human race to run errands for him, as if he couldn't take care of himself. He makes the creatures. The creatures don't make him. Starting from scratch, he made the entire human race and made the earth hospitable, with plenty of time and space for living, so that we could seek after God. Not just grope around in the dark, but actually find him. He doesn't play hide and seek with us. He's not remote. He is near. We live and move in him. We can't get away from him." As we come to worship this morning, we know that God is near. And we don't have to search high and far for him, that he is close and wants us to be able to find him. And in fact, as we worship, God's grace comes to us. God moves towards us as we move towards him. Why don't we stand together as we sing the song? It's there in the newborn cry, there in the light of every sunrise, there in the shadows of this life, your great grace. It's there on the mountain top, there in the everyday and the mundane, there in the sorrow and the dancing, your great grace, oh such grace. And from the creation to the cross, there from the cross into eternity, your grace finds me. Your grace finds me. It's there on a wedding day, there in the weeping by the graveside, there in the very breath we breathe, your great grace. The same for the rich and poor, the same for the saint and for the sinner. Enough for this whole wide world, your great grace, oh such grace. And from the creation to the cross, and there from the cross into eternity, your grace finds me. Yes, your grace finds me. It's there in the darkest night of the soul,
there in the sweetest songs of victory, your grace finds me. Yes, your grace finds me. Your great grace, oh such grace, your great grace, oh such grace. The same for the rich and poor, the same for the saint and for the sinner. Enough for this whole wide world, your great grace, oh such grace. You can have a seat.
And if you're a kiddo, you're welcome to head downstairs right now. You're going down with Janelle and Lindsay, it looks like. Thanks, Janelle and Lindsay. We'll see you back here in a little bit, kids. Well, as we continue on here this morning, I want to invite us to just take a pause here for a moment, a breath, and kind of reflect on where we are in this moment, just how we might be feeling coming into this space, what we might have carried with us into this space. And there's a prayer rhythm that we often kind of use here of praise, protest, and petition. And often that's a verbal prayer. We'll use that together and we'll talk out loud to each other and share things. This morning we're going to just move through it quietly and personally. And so I want to invite you to, as we often say around here, to find a posture that helps you be attentive and open here, whatever that might mean. It might be helpful to get your feet on the floor. If you're at home, this would be true for you too. Just so that you, okay, yep, here I am, right? Kind of root yourself. Let your body be engaged in these few moments of prayer. And I invite you, as we begin, to just reflect for a moment about where grace has maybe met you in this last week. What, as you look back on the last few days, could you give thanks for, is worthy of celebration and joy? Just consider that for a moment and quietly to yourself name that thing or those things or that person or that event. What's worthy of giving God praise for this morning? And then what of this last week has broken your heart? What has been hard or difficult? This could be in your life. This could be in your neighborhood. This could be something in the world. There is certainly no shortage of things worthy of lament and protest, saying, God, this is not as it should be. So I invite you to name whatever comes to mind in this kind of category here of prayer, of lament. I often find in me a resistance to lament, and that just is partly because probably of who I am, but I often just don't want to think about the hard stuff. And yet it's really important to name, to speak into existence, to get it just out of our minds and name it. It's how we begin to move through it. It's how we begin to be authentic and true to what we might be feeling, what might be heavy on our heart. So we praise together, we protest together, we lament, and then finally we ask for what we need. Given what is not as it should be, given what this week upcoming holds for us, we ask God with open hands for what we need today. Friends, God is here. We are here. This is holy ground. Amen. Amen. Well, let me invite you to consider some scripture here with me this morning. I'm going to read two passages back to back. One is from Mark 10 and the other is from Matthew 23. I'll read that passage from Mark 10 first. It's just a handful of verses. You can listen along here. Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to Jesus. Teacher, they asked, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. What do you want me to do for you? Jesus asked. They replied, let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory. And then down to verse 41, when the other 10 disciples heard about this conversation, they became indignant with James and John. And then Matthew 23, 25 to 27. What sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites! For you are so careful to clean the outside of the cup and the dish, but inside you are filthy, full of greed and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisee, first wash the inside of the cup and the dish, and then the outside will become clean too. What sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites! For you are like whitewashed tombs, beautiful on the outside, but filled on the inside with dead people's bones and all sorts of impurities. So Jesus, at this moment here in this last passage from Matthew 23, is speaking to the religious leaders of his time, but make no mistake, these words are for anyone who would have ears to hear. And Jesus' message is quite pointed and clear, that the outside of the cup, in other words, the persona that you present to the world, the image of yourself that you want other people to see, that image, that persona can be shiny and clean, very impressive. But if the inside of the cup, if your interior life, your heart, isn't cared for and tended to, sorrow awaits. Sorrow because we so quickly believe that a shiny outside can bring us lasting joy and deep fulfillment. That's the lie that we buy into. But it never does. It is a lie. It might be impressive to have a shiny outside, to have a really impressive persona to present to the world, And it might gain you attention and even some notoriety, but in the end, it will not bring you what you most desire. If we want to be whole people, we must care for and tend to our heart. Now, the word heart is used hundreds of times in the Bible, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, and it's always used to describe the inside of the cup. One definition puts it this way, that the heart is the fountain and the seat of our emotions, thoughts, passions, appetites, affections, purposes, endeavors. That's a lot, right? The heart covers a lot of ground, and it covers perhaps the most important ground. And Jesus is speaking pretty clearly here that this is where we should devote our energy and our attention. Don't spend your life trying to bedazzle the outside of the cup. Instead tend to and cultivate your heart. And then guess what? The outside actually will take care of itself. Well, Lent is this thousands-year-old practice or rhythm or pattern about tending to the heart. And I know that Lent often becomes about things like fish fries and giving up chocolate, which maybe are helpful things, maybe. But for centuries, at its core, Lent has been, for followers of Jesus, a time to pay attention to what is going on the inside, to examine carefully and honestly our hearts. And this is the journey that we're going to try and embark on for these 6 weeks of Lent. And I've been thinking this week about a book that I have come across. Bethany ordered it, and I've been reading it, and I mentioned it about a month ago here in a sermon. It's a book by Brene Brown called Atlas of the Heart. And in this book, Brene does a number of things, but her main purpose and intent in this book is to help people increase their vocabulary about what happens in the interior of our lives. To increase our vocabulary, which, I don't know, maybe to you may seem like, why? I hate vocabulary. Thank you. What's the big deal about vocabulary? Well, she did this with her group. She's a researcher primarily. And she, over the course of, let's see, how long? 5 years, asked people a question or asked them to do something. And she got over 7,000 responses over the course of those 5 years. She asked people to write down all of the emotions that they could recognize and name that they experienced themselves. And when people did this, what she found was that the average number of emotions that people could identify, write down, and describe was 3. 3. Now, it varied what 3 those were, but the most dominant ones were happy, sad, and angry. And then Brene says this about kind of this finding. She says, what does it mean if the vastness of human emotion and experience, if the vastness of the human heart can only be expressed as mad, sad, or happy? What about shame, disappointment, wonder, awe, disgust, embarrassment, despair, contentment, boredom, anxiety, stress, love, overwhelm, surprise, and all the other emotions and experiences that define what it means to be human? And then she quotes a psychologist, Dr. Susan David, who says that if we don't have a sufficient emotional vocabulary, it is difficult to communicate our needs and get the support we need from others. If all we have is mad and happy and sad, we're going to have a hard time understanding what's actually happening in our heart, and interacting with each other in ways that we might be able to help each other. You know, if I say to you, I'm sad, I'm feeling sad today, because that's the only word that I really have to use. But underneath, it's not just sadness, it's actually disappointment. Those are very different things. Disappointment means that someone has done something that I didn't expect, or I expected them to do something and they didn't do it, and so I am disappointed. In other words, there's an issue between me and someone else. If I'm just sad, I might not be able to pinpoint the reality that in order to be whole and my best and fullest self, I actually need to have a conversation with someone who's disappointed me, right? If all I have is the word sad, I might miss this whole other thing going on over here. Just one example. And so Brown goes on in this book, Atlas of the Heart, to write about 87 emotions and experiences that human beings have. And again, her intention is to give us a better vocabulary so that we can map our heart, so that we can understand what's going on. And so this Lent, we're going to dip in and out of this book, and we're going to look at stories from the life of Jesus, because guess what? Jesus is also always talking about the interior life, the inside of the cup. And so we're going to kind of hold those two things together. Today, we already heard that story from Mark 10 about the disciples, James and John, coming and asking for those special seats. We'll come back to that. We also are going to just briefly consider one of the chapter titles in this book, Atlas of the Heart, Places We Go to Self-Assess. That's actually the title of the chapter, Places We Go to Self-Assess. I think it's an appropriate chapter given Lent, and Lent being a time of assessment, of looking inward and honestly evaluating. And in this chapter, Brown covers three things: pride, hubris, and humility. And we're going to talk about those again very briefly, and we're going to have some conversation with each other about these three things too. Let's talk about pride for a second. Pride is an interesting word, isn't it? It has very different meanings depending on the context. It can have a very positive meaning, I'm proud of you, and it can also have a very negative meaning, pride cometh before the fall, right? Like, it has both, and it really depends on context, which makes it a word, if you're going to use it, you have to really pay attention. If you're listening, you have to. So Brown actually points out that pride, according to sociologists and researchers today, authentic pride is actually this. It's positive. It's the feeling of pleasure or celebration related to our accomplishments. Most sociologists, researchers, folks who study this sort of thing suggest that pride is a positive thing. It can be a really wonderful thing. And actually, as I was looking at the New Testament this week, the New Testament uses this word positively more often than not. Here's an example. I have the highest confidence in you, Paul writes to the Christians in Corinth, and I take great pride in you. That's a positive use of the word. So here's a question I want to ask of you and of us today, and we're going to do this in some groups here. Who is someone that you're proud of, or something that you're proud to be a part of, and why? All right? Now, to do this, we're going to have to probably, in this space, we might have to shuffle around a little bit so that we get somewhat equal rooms. Like, you guys are going to probably have to move back and go with the Verkikes and Frenzies. You may have to turn and find some other folks. We may have to rearrange a little bit, but I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to have a bit of conversation. So shuffle around in your seats, just a smidge if you need to. Turn around and have a quick conversation about this. If you're at home, you're watching us online, put something in the chat window. Let us see what you're thinking from there as well, and we'll move on from there. Ready, set, go. Say hello, introduce yourselves if you need to do that. How does pride show up in a positive way in your life? All right, we got about 30 seconds. All right. So what if pride is thought of in that sort of way? When we self-assess, when we look inward at our heart, it would be very reasonable to see ways in which we are proud of ourselves, proud of other people, proud of things we're a part of. Pride can be a very positive thing. Hubris, not so much, not so much. You know, this isn't a word that we use a lot I don't. Anybody use this word regularly in their lexicon? JP does. Excellent. Anyone else? Anyone else? Are you bragging? Are you showing your hubris? Awesome. I didn't know that. Great. So I think maybe we should all follow JP's lead, because this word actually is quite helpful if we understand what it's getting at. And here's a definition of it. An inflated sense of one's own innate abilities that is tied more to the need for dominance than to actual accomplishments. Pride is about accomplishments, celebrating, recognizing what has happened that is good. Hubris isn't really connected to whether or not a person has done something good or not. A person can be full of hubris and have done nothing of value, right? And related to hubris, therefore, I mean, when researchers look at this word and look at people's behavior, they find a high correlation between hubris and narcissism. And narcissism, Brené Brown defines, I think this is a helpful definition, as shame-based fear of being ordinary. It's interesting. You can disagree with her. You might have a better definition, but this is curious to ponder for me. The fear of being ordinary. I wonder if we all don't have some measure of fear around being ordinary. And it might cause us to try and puff ourselves up, get this inflated sense of our own abilities. So let me ask this question back to your groups again for a moment. In what ways can hubris and narcissism cause harm? And while you kind of are starting to roll that question around, let me actually just read again that little section from Mark 10. All right, and just listen to this. Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to Jesus. Teacher, they said, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. Wow. I love it. What do you want me to do for you? Jesus asked. They replied, let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory. This is hubris, right? Hey, Jesus, we are that important. I mean, let's just be honest, Jesus. We're better than the other 10. We're like crushing this disciple thing. So can we sit at your left and at your right when you come to glory, when you come to power? Let us sit in the seats of power as well. So that's about dominance, which hubris is about dominance. So that's what the disciples have going on. And then when the other disciples hear about and catch wind that this conversation has taken place, they're indignant. Why? Maybe because James and John beat them to the punch. They all want to sit in the seats of power, you know. And so you see some pretty destructive outcomes because of the hubris and the potential narcissism here. And so, again, back to the question, in what ways can hubris and narcissism cause harm? Maybe you have an example. If you do, you might want to leave it anonymous for this group, but maybe you can talk generally about, you know, times when you've seen someone act in this way. Or if you want to be vulnerable this morning and say, well, there's this one time when I did something. How do we see it cause harm? Get back into those same groups. We'll take a couple minutes to do it, and then we'll come together. All right, so let's bring it back here. Thanks to you online. Good stuff in the comments. Appreciate it. So keep that coming. So you have this interaction with the disciples. You have all of them kind of erupting. They're indignant, the text says. And so then in verse 42, Jesus got them together to settle things down because things had become quite heated. And he says, you've observed how godless rulers throw their weight around. And when people get a little power, how quickly it goes to their heads. It's not going to be that way with you. Whoever wants to be great must become a servant. So in this passage, we see hubris, certainly, but we also see Jesus' call to humility. This is the third thing that we might notice when we do a self-assessment. When we look honestly at ourselves, we might find pride, we might find hubris. Hopefully, maybe we also find some humility. And this is a potentially helpful definition. Again, you can disagree or you might have one that's better. But Brene Brown says it this way: humility is an openness to new learning, combined with a balanced and accurate assessment of our contributions, including our strengths, imperfections, and opportunities for growth. I like a lot of that definition. The two words that I kind of stand out to me, though, are balanced and accurate assessment. Humility isn't beating yourself up. It's not some false humility, right? Have you encountered that, or have you practiced that before? Oh, no, I'm not very good at that. That's not humility, number one. It's also not, I'm just so terrible, I can't do anything right. That's not humility. Humility has space for what we do well, for our strengths. It can hold those things and acknowledge those things. But it also is accurate in that it is able to look at our hearts and our lives and say, oh, I do have those strengths. I also, though, am a bit off base over here. Or I did really help so-and-so this week, but I also caused some harm in this relationship. It's balanced and accurate assessment of ourselves. And so here's the last question for this time. How does humility help bring wholeness to ourselves and others? And then a secondary question: what can we do to help develop a humble heart? So turn to each other. Take both, one, whatever you'd like, or none of those questions. Have a conversation about humility, but let's do that for a couple more minutes and keep the comments coming online. Ready, set, go. Let's wrap up that conversation. And I'd actually love to hear from folks. What did you say? What were you sharing with each other about either of these questions? How does humility help bring wholeness? Or what can we do to develop a humble heart? What was said in your groups? Just shout it out. We won't work our way around the room. So what stood out to you? What did people say? Yeah. Yeah. It's great. I should have a microphone and be able to hand it to you so I don't have to repeat it or try to repeat it. But Bethany said, you were talking about the specific example of anti-racism work, that you have to have a solid grounding of who you are. So you have to have an honest assessment that I do bring these things, or I am in this place. Otherwise, you get in this shame loop, and you get nowhere. You actually probably go backwards, and you're not open to learning. Yeah. Good, thanks. What else? What else did you say? I heard you talking, so, I mean, unless you like totally abandoned the question and started talking about lunch, which I don't blame you, but. Yeah. Mm. Mhm. Yeah. So humility allows you to not have the need to know everything, not have all the answers to everything. Yeah. It's good. Critical, actually. Some folks are saying some great things online. If we can accurately assess our strengths and see where we need to grow, then we can be curious about our world and not worry about being judged for the questions we ask. That's from Amy Ritzema. Heather says, having realistic expectations of ourselves and others can help us be vulnerable with ourselves and one another. That's good. So let's end with this question here. This is kind of a contemplative question, but also one of action. It's, I think, good to think about pride and hubris and humility, but to just think about it or even to just talk about it here might not mean a whole lot unless we translate that into some sort of action. And this might be very simple, like I am going to this week, one step is I'm going to take a walk 3 times this week and use that walk as an opportunity to reflect on what's going on in my heart. Or I'm going to journal. I don't journal often, but I'm going to journal this week and try and write down and be reflective about hubris and humility and what's going on inside me this week, where I may be doing well or where I'm struggling. Or maybe the step is to reach out to a friend and share your heart with them this week. Or, right, could be anything. I want to just take 60 seconds here of quiet for you and I to pause and to ask, what is a step that I might take this week to move more toward a whole heart? So let's pause. Let's ask that question together. Kevin's going to lead us in a song here which fits into what we've been talking about this morning. You can keep reflecting on that question while we have this song going. You, of course, are welcome to sing along. But the words of this song are, and the chorus is just, here's my heart, Lord, here's my heart. And so we offer this song as a way to keep reflecting and being open as a people to what God might want to do on the inside of the cup in our lives. Thanks, Kevin.
Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Speak what is true. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Speak what is true. 'Cause I am found, I am yours, I am loved, I'm made pure. I have life, I can breathe, I am healed, I am free. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Speak what is true. 'Cause I am found, I am yours, I am loved, I'm made pure. I have life, I can breathe, I am healed, I am free. 'Cause you are strong, you are sure, you are life, you've endured, and you are good and always true. You are light breaking through, and you are more than enough. You are here, you are love, and you are hope, you are grace. You're all I have, you're everything. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Speak what is true. And here's my life, Lord. And here's my life, Lord. Here's my life, Lord. Speak what is true. Speak what is true. Speak what is true.
We're going to share communion together. But, you know, one thing we heard loud and clear in the previous 3 weeks was how much we've missed being able to be together, the disconnection that we feel, the longing for reconnection. And so that means that some of the stuff we're going to do on Sunday mornings might look a little different. And during Lent, we're going to try something a little different for communion. Do you know that in the early church, for the first probably 200 to 300 years, worship was always around a meal? There were no church buildings. It was homes, people gathering, and a meal took place, like an actual literal feast, a potluck, perhaps. And then part of that meal was communion. They would pause and specifically share in that. So we're going to try something kind of like that. You notice there's not a potluck here, sad but true. But we're going to try to just use the next few minutes as a chance to connect. And here's what we've done. This row and this row, the chairs are disconnected so that you can turn your chairs around and face the person in the row behind you. Same is true in these rows. The chairs are disconnected so you guys can turn your chairs around and face the frenzies, and you can turn and face. And then these rows are disconnected so that you can turn and face. So I want to invite you to do that. Go ahead. Go ahead and swap your chairs around. If you're at home, sit tight. Maybe grab your communion stuff. Go ahead, turn your chairs around. If you're online, you can consider these questions as well. Just turn a couple chairs. Yep, scooch around, rearrange yourselves. Make a big group. You guys could come down here. Come on, you can move around. You don't need me to tell you that. Move around. Yeah, good. Imagine a table in between you. I know, we're going to have to flex our muscles here a little bit. Good. So, up on the screen are some questions that you might ask each other if you were actually around a dinner table. Like, hey, how was your week? You know? And what went well? And, oh, that happened at school? And, oh, what are you thankful for? And, oh, let's celebrate that together. Oh, that was tough. That sounds like that was really hard. All right, you would just have conversation. And so we're going to do that here for a few minutes. We're just going to have conversation like you are around a dinner table. While you're having that conversation, Teresa and I are going to come to you, and we're going to give you a plate of bread. Well, actually, we're going to quick walk around and give everyone a piece of bread, and then we're going to quick come around and give everybody a little cup. You just keep talking while we're doing that, because we're just like, it's like you're at our house, and we're just serving you a quick bit of food, and so you just keep chatting away. And then I'll kind of pause us all, and we'll share the bread and the cup together. If you're at home, you're in a little bit of a different spot, but I would invite you to maybe use this time to connect with somebody else, either in your home. If you've got other people, circle up, have this same conversation. If you don't have other folks with you, maybe send somebody a text message. Send a few people a text message this morning. Let them know that you're thinking about them, that you love them, that you're grateful for them, and then get your communion stuff ready. So we're around a table. Let's have some table conversation. Let's check in with each other on how the week's been, and we'll move on from there. Ready, set, go. All right. Yeah, what's up? What's up? All right. I thought it might happen that we would not want, I would not want to end this time, but alas. The morning is moving along, and we want to make sure we have enough time. So, everybody have bread. If you're at home, do you have something as well? We'd love for you to share in this meal. You know, these, we often say, are the gifts of God for the people of God, right? Gifts, reminders, tangible offerings to us so that we might be able to, once again, kind of get into our bones and our hearts and our very souls this truth that God is just relentlessly offering us love. Love, love, love. Grace, grace, grace. A body laid down, a life given up, perhaps the best example of that love. But it's all around us if we are willing to look. And so we even look at each other today, and we see in the face of each other grace and love, and we give thanks for it. So let's take and eat and drink these good gifts. Thanks, buddy. Good stuff. All right, now we got one more thing that we're going to do here this morning. It's hard to do this, but you probably want to turn your chairs around if your back is to us at the moment, because Janelle's going to come on up here and she's going to share just a brief little story. Teresa's going to kind of do a real quick little mini interview.
Maybe.
So Janelle and Mike, a few months back, recorded a podcast, an episode of our Sacred Works podcast, which we will point you to real soon here after Janelle's done talking. So we thought it would be a great chance for her to just give a little bit more,
Sure.
or a reminder.
Sure.
How about that? So Mike and Janelle talked about vocation as a family and about figuring out who they all are and the gifts that they all bring, and what that means as a family and how they show up and how they live. And it's a really beautiful story, so you want to listen to the whole thing, I promise. But there was one moment you were talking about some stuff that was going on, and this was, I think this conversation happened in the summer of 2020, right?
Correct,
Where there
yep.
was plenty going on.
Yes.
And you were talking with your kids about it, and sweet Lucy looks at you and says, "That's a lot."
Yes.
Yeah. So I remember you saying that, and it made me wonder, how do you decide what to do and what not to do, right?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that stuck with me a few years ago, I was watching a show hosted by a comedian, Hassan Minhaj, and he said at the end of one of his episodes, he said, you just can't deeply care about everything. You have to like pick a couple things and then like really invest. And I think that like gave me permission a little bit to go, okay, I don't have to care about every issue, everything that's happening, but I do need to decide what it is that I care about deeply and what as a family we care about deeply. And so for us, that really ended up being anti-racism, LGBTQ plus issues, and like climate change and the environment. So pretty much every choice we make, every decision regarding, just everything that comes into our life where those kind of are factors, we talk through it in terms of those, because those are the things we've sort of decided are where we want to invest, the things that we feel passionate about.
Yeah, and it's so important to name those things, right? Because
Yes.
Otherwise, you're like, oh yeah, that's good, that's good, that's good, and they
Yes.
all are good things to,
Yes,
to
absolutely.
invest your energy in. But you can
Yes.
only do so much, especially
Absolutely.
as a family with small kids. Right?
Yes, and in a pandemic,
Yeah,
So.
that whole thing. That whole thing, exactly. So I really loved how you and Mike both talked about how your kids were uniquely made and wired, and getting to know exactly who they are, and obviously as they grow that changes and develops. But why was that important to you? Or maybe what can we do to, like, what's a step we can do to help figure out some of those things about ourselves, or if we're parents, about our kids? How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, I think looking at our kids, I think it's just really about narrowing down like what seems to make them happy, or what gives them energy, or what they seem excited about. So as for Teddy, like, he loves art, and so that's something, right? If we can somehow incorporate art into something, that's what he wants to do. Or Francie is 100% our social butterfly. Like, she just wants to be with people, and so having that gift for her, and like, what does that mean? How does that work in our life? And how can I think for us, it's like, if we're going to go do something, what can make our kids all sort of fit and have a place to be a part of it? I think for me, I think Mike and I have grown a lot in the last couple of years, and I think a lot of that has had to do with being more mindful of how we're feeling. And really, for me, like, what's making me angry, what's making me anxious, what's making me like excited, those types of things, and really paying attention to that. And so as much as we're trying to pay attention to those things in our kids, what makes them excited, what makes them even angry or upset or whatever, we're trying to do the same for us. And I think learning a lot about ourselves in the process, and learning about what means the most to us.
Yeah. Thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much for this short little brief check out the podcast, which I was going to put a QR code up on a screen, and right now I just remembered I forgot to create the QR code. So go to sacredworks.net, and there's all of a bunch of resources there, some other podcasts. Yours will be up very, very soon, and you can get the rest of the story from Mike and Janelle. And the rest of Lent, we're going to be doing a little bit more of this. Take a couple of minutes and share your story. Not you. You're good.
I'm
You're good.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Check. Yeah.
But hey, look, it's not scary, right? Not scary.
No,
No.
not at all.
no. So we would love to hear from so many more of you as we tell stories and grow as a community together. So
Beautiful. Hey, why don't we stand up as we prepare to go today, and we'll receive a blessing here. Some words to leave with. Great, Yeah, we'll rearrange our dinner tables. Excellent work. Yeah. So our hope is that Lent would be a journey toward wholeheartedness, and that would certainly mean different things for each of us is probably true. So whatever it means, and as we thought earlier today about what step might I want to take toward wholeheartedness, friends, may you be people this week who take those steps, who move closer toward a whole, full, authentic heart. May you be honest. May you be balanced in your assessment of yourself. May you have eyes to see what good things God has given you. And may you have eyes to see ways in which maybe you have caused harm or fractured others or yourself. And then again, take those steps towards wholeness. Be those people this week. Amen. Thanks for being here, everybody. Hang around, keep having some dinner conversations, and we'll see you next week.